a legal panel tonight of absolute superstars talking us through their careers in the legal field, talking us through what it takes, the hunger that's required to be successful, the challenges of navigating the legal landscape, and so much more. Small print being, I'm talking to lawyers, so I may not get a question in edgeways, but I'll try. If there is one thing you wished somebody had instructed you, had advised you, before you studied the law, before you decided on your career path, what would it be?
Just to give a bit of background about how I started my legal careers. I moved to South Africa from Zimbabwe, finished school, moved over to South Africa. I had a very strong-willed mother who would not take any other profession as adequate. So she enrolled me into law school. I actually wanted to be a journalist. I'm thankful she did, because I feel she saw my skills and my qualities before I did. But I did not know when I started uni in South Africa that I would not be able to qualify as an advocate, as a lawyer in South Africa, because I wasn't a South African national and I didn't have permanent residence. So I think had I done more research before that, I think in terms of my choices, my university choices would have been different. Looking back, it was a hurdle. I qualified in South Africa, finished my LLB degree in South Africa. And at the point that I wanted to train as a lawyer, do articles, I went for a couple of interviews, but when the citizenship question came up, it was like, oh, sorry, we have to prioritize our nationals. And that's something that makes sense, but perhaps something a lot of Zimbabweans do not know. If you look at the South African universities, Wits, Rhodes, Cape Town, wherever, they're actually full of Zimbabwean nationals paying foreign fees, but they absolutely have no clue that they will not be able to qualify in that jurisdiction. And I think it's a shame that articles or whatever happens post your degree is actually considered work, when actually it's just part of your formal training. So I would have perhaps gone back to the UK where I was born and done my degree there and qualified a lot earlier. Without having to go through all the hurdles that I had to do. So I finished in South Africa, went back to the UK, had to convert, then had to do the LPC legal practice course only to become a lawyer. So more research.
Okay, so we've got research being the first thing. And I suppose in your case, the idea of spending time that you might have been able to plug straight into your studies in the UK, given that you didn't end up studying in South Africa, would have been invaluable to you. Let's go to Jamie. So Jamie, for those who don't know, is a UZ grad. We hold in very high esteem, University of Zimbabwe alumni, because you guys couldn't just waltz into the university, right? So good on you, but let's understand what happened after UZ.
That's true.
Yeah, well, like you rightly said, my journey, in the legal fraternity started in Zim at the University of Zimbabwe, which is, even to this day, is one of the things I'm particularly proud of, because as you said, it wasn't easy to waltz into that university, and we had some great professors, just amazing men who understood the law, and women. One of the most frustrating things, I think, with, having studied the law was what Tenji sort of alluded to, having to, whenever you change jurisdiction, having to requalify. That's one of the biggest challenges. So in my case, when I left Zimbabwe, I came into England, and it took me the better part of 4 years to finally, get to grips with the new economy, and then start the whole requalification process. Because like a lot of Zimbabweans who are relocating, you get into a country and you have to start earning a living. And there was a lot of I wouldn't call it prejudice, but a lot of, yeah, you've got this degree, but it's from Zim, who really cares? So I to this day, I still have all of my rejection letters from all of the law practices and various, as Twande said, ancillary, service organizations that simply said, yeah, you probably have something that you're good at, but we're not convinced that you'd make a great lawyer. So one of the things that I had to do was go into some different types of work. I ended up doing, I became an administration manager for the Chartered Institute of Transport in London, so on Portland Place, which was something that I'd have never done. So rather than looking at it as an absolute negative, it actually helped me to hone my skills in areas that I possibly would have never considered if I hadn't had to do it, if you see what I mean. But yeah, it is a major, and again, this may have changed over the years, so don't quote me on this, but certainly when I was qualifying, I had to come here and pretty much start from scratch, which wasn't great.
Starting from scratch, gosh, that's really painful. But you know what? Sometimes you've got to, in order to then ascend as you have to a managing partner in a law firm in the UK, which not everybody can say that they've achieved, right? So good on you, Jamie. Start afresh, but if you do so, do it intently and do it well. Tondi, could you let us know what your journey's been like, or what you needed to know before you started?
It all starts with high school for me. If I had the right career advisor in high school to properly map out the way you should qualify, I would have tunneled my vision a lot better. So it almost as if my experience was I learned along the way what I needed to do to get to where I needed to get to. I took A-level law. I then took my LLB at Hertfordshire University. And it was only until the final year in university that I realized I need to apply for vacation schemes to get noticed by these big ticket law firms. I remember my first application was to Allen and Overy and Squire Patton, big US firms for vacation schemes, and I got a flat out rejection within a week. It was heartbreaking. But then, as I continued to get rejected and apply, I realized where I was failing and what I needed to tweak, what I need to focus on. So off the bat, I didn't get a training contract because I applied too late on my vacation schemes. So if I have any advice for anyone, is to be absolutely visionary in your career. If something's not working, think beyond that and look at how else you can get your foot in the door. What else can you do to reach your goal? I speak from experience, and the right way is not necessarily always going to be correct. We are all individuals. You'll have heard from everyone on the panel. They have had their own individual journeys. But the most important thing is keeping that target very firm, that you want to be a lawyer. So for me, it was, I am going to be a lawyer one day. And that's what I focused on. So it meant at every stage in my career, I learned all the tools that I needed to acquire, the skill set that I needed to have on the job. So my first job was as a legal secretary. I couldn't get a job as a paralegal because they were all, and this was during the recession. So they weren't taking any training contracts. So I thought to myself, I need to somehow get my foot in the door. A year before that, I got internship in Singapore. And I'm sorry, I'm going to take slightly longer with my story, but hopefully it will answer a lot more questions later. And I'll try to condense it within 10 minutes. Apologies.
You've got 3 more minutes for this bit, and then we'll come back to you.
Okay, sure. All right, well, I'll try to be quick. I had an internship in Singapore. Singapore gave me an international aspect. I used that to propel my job applications as a legal secretary. As a legal secretary, I asked for more work as a paralegal, for more skills as a paralegal. That gave me the opportunity to put more skill sets within my CV. I sent that off to law firms. I got rejected 55 times from different law firms for training contracts. In my 4th year of trying, the UK released what are called the equivalent means access route to becoming a solicitor. Being a visionary, I decided at one point I would take notes of every work that I did. And by God's grace, when the equivalent means the route came out, I was able to use all of the experience and the training notes that I had to present to the Law Society to say, look, all the work that I've done up until now is equivalent to the work of a trainee. And then that sort of got me sort of interviews as an associate. And then the rest from there is history and for another day.
So the fact that you've touched on this, Natai, I am coming back to you for your story, but I want to quickly switch to this idea of privilege. And, you know, today being Blackout Tuesday means that this is quite topical, right? My question being, how much more challenging is it for a person of color to try and break into some of these spaces? Because, you know, as I mentioned earlier, this is Nepotism 101. Tondera is my brother, which means I've been able to witness his journey. And knowing how brilliant he is and knowing how hardworking it is, it was frustrating for us looking on to see him just get rejected for no other reason, perhaps, than he was a Black man. Now, I know people get uncomfortable talking about this, but this is fact. Natsai, I now come to you because we can roll this into you. You've occupied a very, very, very unique space. You know, I've done a song and dance about having a Zimbabwean Black female walking into chambers, sitting on, on the bench, you've been able to become a judge.
Yeah.
Can only assume that it wasn't straightforward. What could you have been equipped with before you started your legal career to kind of perhaps speed up the process for you?
Okay, well, the first thing that I'll say to anyone listening is just ignore the background noise and remove all self-doubt. Now, sometimes our worst enemy is ourselves, but that might be based on experiences that you've had in the past. I think if there was one thing I would have changed, looking back on my journey, although I'm eternally grateful for where I am now, it's not to doubt myself and not to suffer from imposter syndrome, which was something that I accumulated over the years without realizing. Now, my journey, and I'll try and, this is by no means a yardstick. It's not a blueprint. As I said at the outset, we are keeping it real. So I am going to be quite frank, but I'm going to give the abridged version because I don't want to take too much time. Now, my journey, although I grew up in Zimbabwe, I finished high school in the United Kingdom. And that was the first time where I thought, okay, well, I am actually quite different here. And I'm going to have to switch gears, not just in terms of a new curriculum, but in having to explain that, yes, I am from Africa, but you don't have to question the qualifications I've got so far or question whether I can do what I set out to do. Now, I'm going to be honest and say I wasn't one of those little girls who from the age of 5 or 7 knew I wanted to be a lawyer. I've got relatives now who haven't seen me for years, that if they heard that I was a judge, they would say, we want to see it for ourselves. They said that when I became a barrister. And I've just said to some family members, don't tell them until I see what I'm doing now. So switching gears, and then it was during my A-levels, and this was when I was still, without realizing, consumed with self-doubt and what I could or could not achieve. And I decided to do law when I was, we're completing our UCAS forms in sixth form. I, once again, not very academic, I thought I can't wait to finish my A-levels and then I'm going to take a gap year and just do what I want to do. One of my friends sat me down and said, well, look, let's fill out your UCAS form and you can defer your entry. And I chose law, and I think the other one was architecture because I was all artsy, fartsy and all of that sort of thing. But with law, I remember the response from my friend, oh, fantastic, if you do that, you'll be, carrying on your father's legacy. Now, this is one thing that I didn't think was going to come back and haunt me, because there are very many people who think I am where I am now because of that. But that for me was, okay, massive shoes to fill if I go down this route with what he had achieved. But I remember a careers advisor coming to our sixth form. And this was a sixth form where, and I'm not going to name any schools, but they, that about 5 black girls in the entire school, and they weren't too sure what we were about. And the careers advisor came in and asked us to all write down what we wanted to study. When I put down law, I think there were 2 other girls who put down law as well. They were told, oh, you go on and be a barrister, you should go on and be a solicitor. And she said to me, you should aspire to be a magistrate's court clerk. And I remember sitting back thinking, oh dear. And then that for me was, okay, that's it. I'm just going to go to university, spend some time there, probably won't go past first year. And this is all I've been told to aspire to. From wanting to take a gap year, I then ended up not having any breaks from school to my LLB to bar school, which is, I'm going to explain some of these terms if I'm called upon to do so later on. Bar school to qualify to be a barrister, to getting a pupillage, tenancy in chambers, and the judiciary. So I've had absolutely no breaks since I was at school. But one thing that I would say to people, as I said earlier, this imposter syndrome can really incapacitate you. And you really have to know your why. Be ready to explain why you want what you want. Because when I then decided, well, look, I've started doing this, I actually do want to be a lawyer. And never mind what everyone said to me in the past. And the way my why helped, because when opportunity knocks, that's not the time to start being overcome by self-doubt. If somebody wants to know, right, you want me to do this for you, I'll tell you a little story. I had deferred my entry, and like I said, this is by no means the blueprint. I don't want anyone saying, well, we'll do that because it worked for her. I deferred my entry, and then I realized I had nothing to do during that gap year. I didn't even call clearing. I picked up the phone and I asked to speak to the dean of the law school at the university I wanted to go to. In absolute shock, the dean's PA put me through, thinking this is a really important call. And I explained that this is what I'd wanted to do. And I would actually like to bring my entry forward. Now, I remember being asked impromptu, why do you want to be a lawyer? And I was able to explain there because I knew my why, and I had turned off all the self-doubt, the imposter syndrome, and that's where my journey began. And that dean, when I was appointed, I looked for the dean everywhere. I think the dean had moved on to another and become the vice chancellor of another university, to say thank you for taking my call. So yes, I mean, that's all I'd say to people for now. And like I said, abridged version, otherwise I'll be speaking for half an hour.
All right, guys, so you see what I've got, how my work is cut out for me, right? These guys can talk, which we absolutely love. So I'm going to be doing some really strange hand signals to sometimes compress so that we're able to kind of get around the panel, because I've got so much to ask you all, and I really want everybody watching to walk away with something useful. I'm hoping that we've got law students from all over the world tuned in, because the diversity on this panel is really very impressive. As mentioned earlier, we've got a legal director, we've got a managing partner, we've got a judge, we've got an arbitration lawyer, and an ex-barrister. So, you know, so much material to pick from. Right, now you mentioned earlier the idea of imposter syndrome, the idea of sort of knocking down doors. Tonderai, you came with the same thing, having finished your education in the UK as well. There was, you know, high school is not quite the same as Zim, so there's that transition from your traditional Zim school model to a UK model, and then everything that goes after. We are raised to think that if we're going to become doctors, lawyers, accountants, and whatever else sits in that basket of ideal professions culturally, that when you do become a lawyer, you've got to go to a golden circle firm. And if you don't quite make it to golden circle, let's try silver, or let's go for an American firm. What is your recommendation to students who are about to roll off, who are starting to think about their training contracts, to think about internships, work experience, whatever it is, around the type of environment that they choose to go into? Because that's quite a defining culture. You know, corporate culture is quite defining on personality as well. And choose the wrong model, that could make or break you. So I'd love to hear from Tonderai first, please.
Thank you. I'm going to use my experience to answer this question. Earlier, you asked what, in light of everything what's going on, is it hard for in my case, Black males to break into the legal industry? And for me, yes, it is. I'll tell you my horror story. Similar to Nitsai, I applied for a certain firm in a top 50 firm in London, and got rejected. I asked for feedback. The answer was, you should concentrate on applying to high street firms because of your background. I went home, I sobbed, but then I realized, actually, no, I will not let somebody define who I'm going to be. And I remember the next day I decided I'm not going to let that bother me. So I carried on applying to the firms because I wanted to be an arbitrator. I want to be an arbitration lawyer. So there are only certain firms, high street firms do not do that. So I applied to WilmerHale, which is the very best arbitration firm in the world. I applied to Linklaters, I applied to Phil Fisher. I ended up working for Linklaters, which is a Magic Circle firm. And as soon as I got in there, I made my presence known, and I said exactly what I was interested to work in. And I asked to be put on the arbitration teams. And through there, I learned how the other lawyers work, the skill sets that they do. And I realized this is a place for me. And like Nitsai said earlier, you've got to be resolute in absolutely where you want to be. And once you make that decision, everything else follows. So if you know, and it comes with what Tenji said earlier, knowing exactly what area of law you find yourself you want to be in. And that unfortunately can only go with sort of experience. So if you don't know, get yourself an internship. Just get yourself an internship so you can see what works for you. And I can tell you now, as far as being a Black male lawyer in an arbitration field, there are not many of us, and that is a real problem. And I see it all the time. And if for all who are watching, you just need to go on to top 10 legal firm, go to the arbitration team and see if you can spot. And that is something that I hope changes in the future. But
so, Jamie,
it's not bad from anyone.
Sorry, Tanvi.
No, I'm just saying, I don't want it to stop anyone. I wanted to encourage people that do not be afraid. If you want to work for the very best law firm in the world, go for it. Just absolutely go for it. And don't doubt, just go. If you fail, just keep on trying.
Wow, thank you. So Jamie, you'd be familiar with arbitration stuff because this is kind of your space as well. Have you found it difficult to break through the color ceiling? I know we talk about glass ceilings in relation to women, right? But there is something about a barrier that's created for people who aren't fitting into a certain mold. What's your experience been?
Yeah, well, I think what Tonde said is correct. One of the things that I've always tried to do traditionally is try and find an in where there is no in. So, for example, if I just take you back, when I started at law school, my dad actually wanted me to become an accountant because he was an accountant, and we sort of had this back and forth because I really wanted to study law, and I'm not even really sure why I wanted to study law. I just did. I think it had a lot to do with Blair Underwood, so that gives you an idea of how far back we're going. Yeah. So I think I was looking at him and thinking, yeah, I want to be this guy. So. So what I did is I was very aware that in order to sort of break down doors, I would have to, and this was before I ever came to the United Kingdom. So I'm in Zim, and this is 1993. So again, we're going back ages. But I kind of felt that if we were going to have any, if I was going to have any chance of succeeding, I had to have more to my name than the conventional law student, because I didn't want to be knocking on people's doors and just having the same sort of qualifications that they had. So in my first year of law school, whilst all of my colleagues were studying law, I then took on an additional professional qualification. So that's when I registered with the Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators and started training to become a company secretary. Because the thinking was I had to have something extra, another string to my bow. So fast forward a few years, when I finished law school in 96, in 97, I was being headhunted to become the youngest assistant company secretary in the history of our country, because of the fact that it wasn't just a law degree I also had this extra qualification. So I said all of that to say this: whenever you look at a lot of the prejudice that's available and very present, in a lot of the economies, specifically in the West, I think one of the things that we have to do as Black professionals is recognize that we're going to bump against a lot of obstacles that maybe some of our white counterparts won't bump up against. But I think the thinking must always be, I've got to be a whole lot better than they are. So this is where you don't have the luxury of playing, sort of playing at 50% and being average or mediocre. And actually, I've got two, I've got two young kids. I've got 4 children in total, but I've got 2 younger kids who are in a private school where, again, they're in the minority. And I have to constantly reinforce this to them and say to them, you might not get all of the opportunities that your white counterparts have, but what you have to do is you have to make sure that you are better than they are. And eventually, if you keep knocking, and Tunde, I really have to commend you, because I know a lot of people who've come into the United Kingdom and literally given up on their dreams because it was difficult to knock down, knock on those doors and keep getting rejected. So the lesson, I would say this, for me, it's yes, you're going to have prejudice. You're going to have prejudice. My wife came to me, I haven't watched this yet, but she was talking about Michelle Obama's Becoming, because she was watching that. And I think one of the things that she spoke about was the fact that, yes, she just recognized that it was going to be more difficult for her, but she just refused to be invisible. And so you just make yourself a larger than life personality through your accomplishments, through your acute understanding of the law, and eventually a door has got to open.
Agreed.
Preach. Okay, so Tenji, we've seen a rise in law firms floating on the stock exchange in recent history. It's worked for some, it hasn't. Slater Gordon being one example where it's just gone horribly wrong. What would you suggest, how does that change the landscape or the mind process of a person in the legal profession in terms of the pressures that this sort of situation creates? Trying to survive in a fast-paced economy, in a global economy, you've got law firms merging, you've got economic pressures, and then you've got targets that you need to meet. And if there's one thing that I've learned hanging around legal people is the billing saga that seems absolutely endless. So I feel for you guys, because yes, we all face our pressures in our respective industries, but it seems to be quite acute with you lot. Talk to me about the impact of decisions that law firms make in their bid to either remain relevant, to remain competitive, on just mental health and, you know, the stress levels that lawyers go through and the pressures to perform. Because this, again, there's a glamorous Blair Underwood suits, Harvey sort of type perception of the legal world, but the reality I see is quite different. Talk us through some of that, please.
Well, yeah, so I grew up watching LA Law and Suits, and you know, you have this mental picture about what it is to work in a law firm. And I think I'll start off by saying it's nothing like that. I think lawyers in private practice, we have to bill, we have targets. So that's pressure. That comes with pressure when it comes to billing cycle. Space within the office changes, the secretaries, the lawyers, just the pressure of getting it all done. It can be really hard. But then you also have to balance client care. So when you're a lawyer, if you're going to be a good lawyer, you have to connect and get the buy-in of your clients. Now, sometimes you need to weigh, when am I going to build a client? When am I just going to be supportive? So I'm an employment lawyer, and I chose that because I like people. I like to connect with people, and that's just what I'm about. I'm a people person. A lot of my clients, my best clients, are actually now really good friends. So, you know, there is that pressure, your billing targets. So you can't just call and just have a, you know, because I need to bill, I need to make my business profitable. Lawyers have a bad rep because, you know, they say, oh, you've got to bill it. But I think transparency is really important. Being able to manage clients' expectations is really important. I think clients tend to really appreciate transparency. They don't want any surprises when it comes to bills at the end of the month. So what I've always been able to do is say, look, you know, I'm accountable to my firm at the end of the day when it comes to the day-to-day pressure. So let's make this work. What can we do to give us a win-win situation? What can I do to hit my targets, but also deliver good quality of service? And what clients really do like is value-added service. What can you do extra and above? Oh, this has just come out in the press. Have you seen this? Let's have a networking event afterwards. Right now, it's all about COVID. It's all about COVID, the coronavirus. And as an employment lawyer, as you can imagine, there's been massive terminations, there's been redundancies, there's been layoffs. How are we going to manage that? It's the HR manager or your CEO client who's going to call you and say, I actually just need to terminate 20 people today. What should I say? How should I phrase it? Holding their hand through the process, this is what makes lawyers good lawyers. I think a lot of people expect lawyers to just speak long, the Queen's English, long and fancy words, and sometimes clients don't like that. You need to be able to adapt and connect with your clients and get the buy-in. When I was a trainee, I did a criminal seat, which meant that I needed to go and speak to criminals in the slammer. So you need to get them, be like, there's no point speaking really sophisticated words, right? So you get there and you connect. So were you selling drugs? You know, connect on that level. And then when you have your CEO, who is Sir Nigel, you need to be able to connect with him as well. And you need to be able to connect with people from diverse backgrounds. And I think that's really what's important. That's one thing that I have been able to develop very quickly is the ability to adapt and adjust. But don't burn out. So many young lawyers burn out. They become workaholics. They send emails at 3 a.m. And you're like, why are you sending me an email at 3 a.m.? Okay, to show that I'm a really good lawyer. And it doesn't mean that you're a good lawyer if you don't sleep. Sleep. So I think work-life balance is important. And one of the things that I've been so blessed to be able to achieve is pick the firms, you know, really target the firms that are big in diversity. Diversity and inclusion is really important, that really consider work-life balance. And this is now important because now when we're going to pitch to clients, what do the partners want to do? They want to say, oh, actually, Tenji, you need to be on this pitch.
Okay, thank you, Tenji. So
I'm finished.
Go for it. You see, I really need to rethink this thing of getting lawyers on because you guys just don't stop talking. Love it. I'm going to put you on pause for a sec though, because I want to go across to Natsai. And you know, you are now in the Queen's land. Literally, you occupy all things Queen's English, behaviors, your conduct, your everything about you needs to kind of work in order for you to be effective, I guess, to be accepted, to do what you do best. With that, again, comes quite a lot of pressure. And I really want to talk about the idealism and the sort of utopian view of what the law is and the reality. So you've gone from practicing, you've gone from studying, you've become a barrister, you've now become a judge. The pressure of making the right decisions, for instance, is absolutely paramount. I'm sure you don't want people to keep appealing decisions you've made. So I can't even begin to imagine the sort of pressure that you face on a day-to-day basis. What nuggets of wisdom would you give to anybody who's kind of looking at a similar route to yours and wants to become a judge, wants to become a barrister? How do they maintain a healthy balance between performing really well and integrity and all that beautiful stuff, and just kind of remaining grounded and sane?
Okay, well, I'll pick up on one thing that Tenji said, because work-life balance is very important. And you do have people who come into the profession and think, if I'm working every single hour that God has sent, everyone's going to think it's fantastic. Yes, it's all about hard work. It's all about determination. But one thing that the people who are watching are looking at is the ability to strike a balance, because everyone needs to rest. So taking a step back, becoming a barrister. So I just want to address some misconceptions very quickly. Lots of people think, for anyone who's ever ruled themselves out, in order to be a barrister in the United Kingdom or in other parts of the world, I have to be male, white, of a certain age. I need to have an English name to get my foot through the door. Oh, I don't have an English first name or surname. I need to have attended certain schools or be adequately connected. Connections are a different thing that we can talk about later, because networks do help. And then the absolute shocker, I need to have a law degree in order to be a lawyer. That's not the case at all. And once again, terms that can be explained later on. So there are lots of people who, when I became a barrister, after all of the hard work, you know, and I'll be honest, in my law degree, I was working hard, but it was only in the second year that I just thought, oh my gosh, this degree is actually going to finish and you're going to have to do something afterwards, start working hard. Managed to get the grades I needed to get into bar school. But I did speak to a few friends who always thought being a barrister was glamorous. So they'd imagine me in my robes. Yes, the robes do look glamorous to the onlooker, but you're baking. It doesn't matter how cold it gets in the United Kingdom. You've got this wig on, you've got this gown on, you've got the collar. You're trying not to be nervous if it's your first day in court. The other side that they didn't see were the long nights, because you do have to put in a lot of work. You have to realize that, for instance, in practice, now the difference between solicitors and barristers, so whereas I think being a solicitor is very much a corporate world, and I'm not going to speak out of turn because we have people who can speak with authority on this panel on the work of a solicitor, but as a barrister, if you are at the employed bar, you're working from a set of chambers, and chambers are just offices from which barristers work. You are completely independent. There is no one who's going to give you a check at the end of each month. and say, you know, good for showing up every day. You're going to have to build your reputation on the quality of your work. So yes, I will not lie, there were things where I had, or chambers had instructing solicitors who preferred a white person to instruct, or an English name, because I mean, sometimes you wouldn't see the client until you get to court, and you really have to hustle. But the good thing is that when you are known for good quality work, your reputation goes before you. Another side that they don't see, the number of times that I was at the likes of Euston Station or King's Cross Station, 5 o'clock in the morning to go and attend a court hearing up in the north somewhere. I think the view of lots of people were, there must be a helicopter that lands on my property, and, you know, and then I get somewhere else and the Bentley takes me across. Yes, you do get to the stage where your reputation has gone before you, you've worked hard, you can pick and choose your briefs, but there are parts of it that it is just hard work. You think no one's noticing what you're doing. Now, fast forward and then becoming a judge. Now, if somebody had told me when I started practicing that I'd be sitting in the amount of time that I was appointed, I would have switched off completely. I wouldn't have believed it at all. Because even though I knew I had broken these barriers that some people might have thought had existed with becoming a barrister, practicing from chambers in a prestigious set in Lincoln's Inn, becoming a judge for me, I just thought, well, that's a tap on the shoulder, isn't it? You know, I'm not connected with the right people. But like I said, your reputation goes before you. And the good thing is that a few years ago, a previous government decided, there was an act of parliament that was passed and a commission was set up to appoint judges on merit alone. And the process is long and grueling, but you are just a number until you are sitting in front of the panel. And you're doing aptitude tests, all sorts of things. So the hard work does pay off. But I always say to people, work smart, not just hard. Strike a balance. I said earlier, be ready to tell people why you want what you are aspiring for. But there is a lot of hard work that goes with it. Being a judge. Now, from being a barrister, we draft skeleton arguments that in some jurisdictions are called pleadings. As a judge now, I can't go and amend my judgment. I have to get it right. So it's the hard work, it's the resilience, it's the ensuring that I'm not looking over my shoulder and just doing what's right. Otherwise, I won't sleep at night.
Wow, wow, wow. It's funny, I've got some of my banker friends online saying how relatable all this is. Innocent, shout out to you. Tatenda Alan Musunga, who is a final year law student, was asking about the global economy and how challenging it's going to be, I suppose, to roll off your course and find a job. And this applies to every industry out there. Couple that with the need to advance with digitization, with, you know, remaining relevant as law firms. I'm turning to Jamie as a managing partner. You're the guy giving pressure to all these guys on their billing. So I'm going to hold you accountable on this one.
Hold it.
It's you lot who give everybody else sleepless nights. But with the advent of technology, there's been talk about sort of legal tech and how that's going to wipe out your profession. And we've seen the traditional model of legal practices shifting. So everything from remuneration models where you've gone from your lockstep model to your eat what you kill, right down to the technologies that you're starting to use. When we started the call, you guys were talking about sort of digital hearings and all manner of things that you're needing to kind of do differently. And when we imagine suits and LA law, the whole glamour that comes with being a legal person is standing in this grand court and, you know, being a wordsmith, and it's the best argument that wins, and it's a battle of the minds and all that lovely stuff. But then there's that reality of people wanting to knock on those doors who just can't because the economy is saying no, not now. What are you doing, or how can you encourage young budding legal professionals to kind of work around these economic challenges?
Okay. Well, I think the most important thing that I would say to young professionals, legal professionals who are coming up in the game now, is they have to understand the importance of being entrepreneurial. And I say that because traditionally what has happened with lawyers, and especially in business, you know, we're generally regarded as the sort of people who make it very difficult to get business done. So if you imagine a traditional legal, sort of a traditional business contract, you've got two parties, and each party is trying to maximize the benefits that flow to themselves, and that's what their lawyer is doing. So they're trying to figure out a way of how much money is on the table and how can I make sure that my client gets more than the other party. But when you really look at what business is all about, business is really about making sure that you can generate money, and B, making sure that if you're a lawyer, that you're an entrepreneur. So you think about how money is made as opposed to, getting bogged down on the legalities of every single thing that you're involved in. For me, it's a mindset. It really is a mindset. And traditionally what we've done as a firm, whenever we are looking at people that we want to engage with, we are always looking for that entrepreneurial flair. So it's people who are, to coin a phrase, ambidextrous. They're not just going to sit there and think, I'm a lawyer and I look really cute in my suit, but how are you going to get the numbers to stack up? How are you going to make money? And are you able to bring a less than traditional approach to what is traditionally regarded as a very stuffy profession? Or, law has changed so much over the years. It really has. And I think people have got to understand that, especially now post-COVID-19, the entrepreneurs are going to make it, and lawyers have to follow suit.
Sorry, Mitch. I'm just going to jump in because what Jamie's saying is what I had to learn. I had to learn to be commercially aware. All of the law firms I was applying to always asked how I would deal with certain real life issues for businesses, and I remember the most nervous interview I ever had was with Linklaters for a training contract, and they have a 6-hour interview process. And during that, one of the questions one of the exercises that they give you is a M&A deal. And you are asked to draft the contract, advise, and then at the end, you're supposed to present to the global head of corporate on this M&A deal, which touches on absolutely every area of business. And unless you have an acute commercial awareness developed, you will not be ready for certain questions. And that's what separates you from another candidate. And I didn't get the training contract offer from Linklaters, but that was because of a very small point. But on the commercial awareness side, I was ready. To wrap up what I'm trying to say here is that for those who are trying to look at how they're going to break in over the next year because of COVID, you've got to look at the trends. You've got to see, for example, what happened in the recession. What were the practice areas that were doing well? Like, where were they hiring? And in this particular climate, the restructuring, employment, those are all sort of very hot areas for lawyers. But there's also a downside for corporate and real estate. Now, if you have an understanding of all of those areas and you can talk about that to somebody hiring, they're going to be very impressed because they'll have an understanding that, okay, this person knows how a law firm works and sort of what they need to pay attention to. As a litigation lawyer, right now, looking at the next year or so, I know the kind of clients that I need to target. I need to target clients that have got contracts then for debt repayments. So they want to be collecting money for outstanding debt to keep their cash flow going. So I'm going to be pitching work to those sorts of companies to saying, look, have a look at your contracts. I can help you because I know how to sort of file a debt claim or an arbitration claim really quickly and sell that to them. If you're looking for another area of law which is up and coming, look at data protection, look at artificial intelligence. If you're a young lawyer, you've just got to stay abreast. And the only way you can do that is reading the Financial Times, just logging onto Bloomberg, get an understanding of what's going on in the global market, and then you tailor your legal career that direction. So when you before somebody answering the why question, you can back it up with that business mindset.
I just wanted to say something very quickly. I know we talk too much, Mucha.
No, it's fine. I love you guys for it. Go for it.
But for me, really, it's networking. I think I cannot overemphasize networking and the ability. You need to be prepared to be exploited as well. Like when you start your legal career, be prepared to work for free. Just go into the law firms. The number of paralegals we have taken on who just literally come into the office and just do work for free. And then they have the ability to impress the management, and then they get taken on. I think a lot of juniors or law students, they want to just go straight into a job, but they don't actually understand that going into law firms and doing free work and getting to network with those lawyers is absolutely essential. And it actually kills me every time I see a law student come into the office, and when they leave, they come through the office and say, oh, bye, we've had a fantastic time. What have you learned? They tell us what they've learned. Have you spoken to the managing partner? No. So you are in the building, but you haven't spoken to the managing partner. Make sure, if you get into that law firm, make sure before those 2 weeks are up, make sure you've spoken to Jamie. Make sure you've said hello, because they are actually waiting for you to come up. The first vacation payment I did, when I went to speak to the partner on my way out, he said, oh, I was wondering when you were going to come and say hello. But I was scared. I was intimidated. I didn't want to go up and disturb him. So it's really important to network and show them how brilliant you are and how hardworking you are and how enthusiastic you are, and just get in front of the right places. Because having a name like Tenju Emoyo might not help you on paper, but just make sure that you can go and stand in front of them and then impress them with your knowledge, with your mind.
Thank you so much. I'm seeing loads of questions coming through, which is fantastic. And I'm seeing lawyers like Ottilia who are attending to those questions online. Thank you very much, Ottilia. I appreciate you. Anything that's not answered live, we will answer offline. So please do bear with us. We have Tatenda Alan Musunga, who's asking tons of questions. Thanks, Tatenda, for your engagement and for sharing. We will come back to you as and when I can. Natsai, what role does mentoring play in a young or old or seasoned professional's journey?
Mentoring is vital. You get to see firsthand, and the first thing that you have to do is have a situational awareness in whatever environment you find yourself in. Now, to use my example, because I like to give examples and not just speak without being able to point to anything. When I started the bar vocational course, you then have to join an inn of court before you can be called to the bar. And on joining the inn of court, you are put in contact with a barrister who's a member of the inn as well. And you have the opportunity to develop a relationship with them. Now, while you engage in activities, that's the time to be able to go in there and have a look around, know what you want to do, and identify people to you. I mean, you don't just, go in all guns blazing. As I said, situational awareness, who is open to speaking to you. And I made the most of the mentor I had. And they're known as sponsors. They don't, give you any sort of financial support whatsoever, but they are your sponsors while you're at bar school. And the interesting thing is I established such a good relationship with my sponsor from bar school. And I was called to the bar in 2001, so we're talking ages ago, that when the Judicial Appointments Commission were approaching the Lord Chancellor with a recommendation, she was one of the people who was called upon because she was a very senior judge by then. And for somebody to be able to see the diligence that you've shown, and obviously that broadens your horizons as well, because you can't go it alone. Unfortunately, a life at the bar, when you're in chambers, you're very independent. You go to court on your own, you're running your own case. There's no one who's really looking at what you're doing apart from your instructing solicitor, obviously, and the client who wants a result. Judges might have black books. I won't really disclose too much on that. So they're watching you as well, because I'm obviously speaking from the other side now. So these networks, the opportunities that you have to network and to identify people, the legal world is such a small world. I mean, I haven't looked at the numbers. I can't speak to other industries, but you really have to be able to have people you can call upon. Now, but there's a flip side as well. If you are going to identify a mentor and you are able to say what it is that you want to do and to take any opportunity that they offer you, the flip side is people not following things through. I have mentored barristers. I've had situations where, just one classic example, my mentee took 45 minutes to come and meet me after court about something. And this was somebody who'd been crying about years and years and years of nobody's paying any attention to me, African name and surname. She was a West African young lady, bright, but just hadn't been given an opportunity. Once you identify a mentor and you have that support that can propel you, you really, really have to pay attention and just show enthusiasm and diligence, because that's what's going to go before you. And I can say the number of doors that opened for me, because there's a classic saying, don't despise small beginnings. I mean, I would be given a certain element of work in chambers, and I know I've been overlooked for bigger things because I'm not Janet Smith, not that I know any Janet Smith, but okay, I'm going to work hard on this brief. And your reputation does indeed go before you. When you start to apply for things, even when they've seen the quality of work that you've produced, once again, going back to my sponsor from bar school, who could say yes. Every time I was meeting her in court to watch her in action, I was there well before she arrived. I also identified mentors before becoming a judge, some very experienced judges, and once again applied the same principles as well, and show enthusiasm. It makes a difference.
So mentorship being key. Tenji will have this subject close to her heart as well. What's your 2P on this?
So yeah, I'm a big believer in mentoring. So I'm very connected to the university because I lecture at the university. And the students are always asking, for some guidance and some support. I think it's absolutely essential to find somebody to mentor you through your career. That has been invaluable to me in terms of knowing how to navigate particularly difficult situations. We don't know everything, and we tend to learn everything through experience. Now, if you know, who am I going to speak to? Who's going to guide me through this difficult situation? I know it could be as simple as a presentation in front of a large audience. What should I do? How should I dress? Any tips? What's a good way to finish? What's a good way to start? You find that those who have a mentor save time. Those who navigate their own way waste time. And the main point of today is really to tell people that, or young students, that ask the questions, because we've been there before. We've made lots and lots and lots of mistakes along the way. And we also know what it is to come from our own backgrounds and to venture into new territories. Moving from South Africa, moving to Dubai, it's been a challenge. That's 2 or 3 different jurisdictions. You need to learn the law again, and then you need to navigate your way again. So find that person who was here 10 years ago. Oh, you've been in Dubai for 20 years. Okay, so what have you learned? What do you suggest? Who do you think I should make connections with? And that's really where the magic happens. And come out of your comfort zone. I think a lot of us like to stay in our comfort zone. When I think about my time, particularly in the UK, I think that time I was very comfortable with my family and my friends that I knew from way back in the time, and failed to venture. I was working in London. I hardly did any networking. I didn't go to the Law Society dinners or join the Black Lawyers Association. So really, expand, get out of your comfort zone, and that's really where the magic happens.
So I'm going to come in from a little angle here and say I receive a lot of feedback, especially through these Zoom in channels, that there is an appetite to be mentored. There is an appetite to be guided, but I'm not sure that our culture lends itself to opening up to mentoring our own people. So it's really easy to go and get that Arab girl, that English girl, that American girl, West African girl even. But how much of mentoring is being directed to Zimbabweans? Or is it simply that we don't have access to them and they don't reach out?
Well, I have access to the Zimbabweans in Dubai. A very dynamic lawyer in Dubai has set up a WhatsApp group for Zimbabwean ladies, specifically Legal Minds. So a shout out to the Legal Minds girls. They are incredible in the sense that if you need another job, where to look, if you need an opportunity, if you need some support. I think these networks need to expand a lot more and be there. certainly when I was in the UK, I didn't come across a group that was specifically targeted at Zimbabwean professionals. Maybe not, but I'm pleased to see that mindset is changing. But when you mentor, when you support somebody, they need to be hardworking. And look, it's not just enough to say, I'm from Zimbabwe, please help me. No, you really need to prove yourself. And before I put anyone forward, I need to assess myself. And I have put people forward. There's some people that I'm absolutely confident that I can put your CV here and you're going to do me proud, because that's essential.
How supportive do you think our culture is in adopting this mentorship type program or process? Because again, my cries for help are typically from young students who are saying, I just need someone to help me, please. I don't know where to start. Everybody I approach is either too senior. In fact, somebody wrote to me a couple of days ago and said that they were asked to put together a dossier of why they should be mentored. Now that kind of takes away, who's got time to do that? That is absolutely ridiculous, right? So talk me through, and I think just the whole partnership, male-female mentorship as well, because guys tend to make decisions, guys tend to rise to partner, guys tend to have it easier up the corporate ladder, if I can put that out there. In your profession, you are the decision makers. How are you helping our youngsters along, and females particularly?
I'll let Jamie go first.
I was about to say, I'm going to let Tunde go
just
first.
pausing. He's pausing. It's like, I don't want to be in trouble because like all these, everyone's watching. So, nah, it's okay. Jamie, you go first. I have a dual response, but it's quite short.
No, fair enough. Listen, I think the long and short of it, and what I'll probably say is I think there's a lot more that can be done. I don't feel that we have a structured approach to mentoring our young professionals in Zimbabwe. And that's a real shame. Mentoring at every level is a game changer, and it doesn't matter what profession you're in. And certainly in the legal profession, I think we could do a lot more to help our young professionals understand how to avoid the potential pitfalls, how to avoid wasting time. There's so many benefits to having the right person speaking into your ear. So I've been following, for example, some of the comments. People are asking questions such as, I've just finished my LLB. Should I go off and do an LLM, or should I do an MBA and things like that? And having the right person speaking to you and giving you insights is really, really priceless. This platform just on its own, I think, has gone a tremendous way, and Mucha, thank you for setting this all up. It's gone a tremendous way to at least bringing professionals who have been working in the same, some of us have been working in the same environment for years and we've never met, but it allows us to sort of streamline our thoughts, put them all together and feed them into the next generation. So I'm a big believer in, hopefully imparting insight into the youngsters who are coming up, just basically making sure that they can save 20 years by listening to what I have to say, if they're willing to listen. Do you see what I mean? So I think all I'll say on this finally is just hopefully what comes out of, platforms like this is an opportunity for people to be able to actually create those conversations and actually formalize what we're talking about right now.
And I'm going to plug in here and say that the vision behind this platform has been just that, to have role models that are doing stuff that works, stuff that's required, stuff that builds. I think our role models can be quite scandalous, and I'm not quite sure that, yes, be inspired by whatever inspires you, but I think that the professional voice is one that's gone unheard for a little too long now. So what we're looking to do is really just put into the fore professionals, role models, mentors who are able to build Zimbabweans up, and Africans and whoever else is interested. Tunde, over to you.
For young Zimbabweans, I think my experience is that they're not enough. I don't get approached enough. I'm not in the circles where I have the opportunity outside of the applications that come through the door in our respective law firms. But I am personally always open to mentor whoever. So the interns that we get at Taylor Wessing, I always take a hands-on approach to work with them and bring them in to every aspects of work that I feel, even if it's beyond their years and experience, I try and then give them tangible work that they can use when they apply for work, or if they find themselves in a position. It's like, oh, actually, I did this at Taylor Wessing. If I get an intern, I don't give them photocopying. I don't do a research task. I want them to engage in actual hands-on work that will allow them to proceed. But as far as finding mentors are concerned, in my experience, when I first interned, I interned for a Singaporean firm called Drew Napier. How I got that internship was I made a beeline for the Supreme Court Judge of Singapore at a talk that he gave. And I said, hi, my name's Tonderai. I grew up in Zimbabwe. I'm the only African in the room. I would like to expand my international experience. Can you give me advice? I then said what I want to do. And then he introduced me to a man called Harpreet Singh. Harpreet Singh became my mentor, and he's been my mentor for 10 years now at every stage of my career. Now, you have to choose who your mentor should be. Find the sort of personality and the sort of individual that you can only do that through research, through networking, like Tenji said. And you can have one, you can have more. I had another black male partner for Linklaters. I'm going to name him. He's called Tom Shropshire. He's in the top 10 lawyers in the corporate industry in England. But Tom was influential. He didn't spoon feed me information. He told me I needed to work hard. He gave me all the tools that I needed to know to be able to get to where I needed to get to without spoon feeding me. Find a mentor who's going to be absolutely real with you, who will tell you where your faults are, who will tell you what you need to work on. And the best way you can do that, as Tenji says, is you've got to put yourself out there. You've got to talk to people. You've got to attend networking events. And
Natai hit the nail on the head when she talked about people actually being responsible with that opportunity. So my personal frustration is someone banging on your door to say, talk to me, talk to me, talk to me. At the point that you do create space and time for them, they're late, they don't show up, they don't follow up on the stuff that you've asked them to do, and it becomes really frustrating. So if you're not serious about that mentorship program, these are senior people, these are really busy people who are extending themselves and are not being paid to do it. So my thing to young people who are seeking that guidance is please be responsible with it and make sure that you tap into it, because ultimately it's kind of building you up. It's for your benefit. Life goes on for everybody else on the panel. Yours may actually be impeded by you not being vigilant with the opportunity before you. Now, as we kind of start rounding up today's discussion, I'm going to do, in fact, I feel like doing a rapid response exercise now. Tenji's frowning. My question is, if not the law, then what? What was plan B to the law, in other words?
Journalism, for sure. I really wanted to be a journalist.
It was architecture. I love technical drawing, art and design. I still do paint now when I have time to.
Accounting.
Yeah, well, no. I'd have made it a lousy accountant, to be honest. I just, it never really tickled my fancy. To be honest, I think I have the best of both worlds, because part of what we do, our business is built around, as I said, and you've heard me emphasize a lot of the entrepreneurial stuff we do. We've deliberately carved out a niche for ourselves, which means we can practice the law, but we also do a lot of advisory work. So in our team, we have commercial designers, we have architects, because we work in the commercial property space as well. We have fundraisers. We've got people who raise money for projects. This is a lot of what we do. So it to be honest, I deliberately made sure I didn't have to be stuck in one corner doing any aspect of, it's just one aspect of my job. It was very much, I can do as much as I want as far as my mind can take me.
I wanted to be an astronaut. I did. For the longest time in my life, since I was a kid, I always wanted to be an astronaut. So much so, 3 years ago, I actually went to a few conventions in Austria on space law, because I thought that is a practice I want to develop. And I still read up on it every now and then, but yeah,
there's still time. There's still time.
I'm now at a point where I think, I've exhausted all the big questions that I had for you guys. And if I start something else, because you're legal people, it's going to take us into another hour. So what I'm going to ask you to do is ask each other pertinent questions of a topic that you think hasn't been addressed on this panel, that somebody on the panel should answer.
I'm going to ask one, a very controversial one. For women in the legal profession, what is the main concern for you working as a barrister, as a solicitor, as a judge, with your social pressures, family, career, and maintaining both, and the struggle that you have faced not only with the color of your skin, but with your gender?
I think it's just trying to bring some structure into your life. I think the more senior you get, you're at least able to bring that out at interview stage, that look, you know, I need an opportunity that will still allow me to have a work-life balance, because I'm not just a lawyer. I have my own personal responsibilities. But, you know, I've been able to work in a place where a DWF, which is my firm, allows me flexibility, which basically means I could work at 2 a.m., but I could keep the mornings to myself to deal with other issues. So I think flexibility is extremely important. Being a Black woman in the legal space, I do think you need to work a little bit harder. I do think when you meet clients in particular, when you meet colleagues, you do have to prove yourself. Just that little more. You know, I'm sure all of us have had awkward experiences with clients, or you know, in the workplace. I've had you know, clients think, oh, okay, are you the lawyer? You know, okay, okay. So yeah, I think you need to prove yourself just a little bit more. So it's really important to ensure that you work hard, you are committed, you are, and within no time you will earn your respect. And you know, a lot of work that I get is because of referrals from people from the outside, because it's now a name. Oh, I'm going to refer you to Tenji. She dealt with my matter. So that's what's really important. But yeah, I do think being a Black woman is an issue. Look, when I was at university and I was looking at all these firms you were talking about, Tondi, when you look at the partners, all you saw was people who didn't look like me.
All I can do is echo what Tenji has said. What the Ministry of Justice is doing, though, when it comes to the judiciary, is that they've developed new ways of working, and they've introduced salary part-time working, recognising that women are often the ones who take backseat. I mean, people can take it up to 60% part-time working, 70%, etc. My position is very different. I don't have a family, so maybe it's been easier for me that way. But two experiences I had whilst at the bar, I haven't really had that many experiences as a judge, apart from being asked, are you really the judge, or when is the judge coming in? Never mind that I was sitting on the bench at that time. But one classic example, as a barrister getting to court, before I've gone into the robing room to put my robes on, I identified my opponent to have a discussion and negotiate so that we could have a shorter day in court. He came up to me and thought I was the usher with what he had started saying to me. And I just thought, it was fine. The embarrassment when he looked over and saw me robed up next to him. So things like that, you know, but you just develop a thick skin, get on with it, and your reputation goes before you.
So whilst I'm not qualified to contribute to this panel, I am a Black woman in the corporate space. So my 2P, I'm going to give a story which I always recount, which is graduate recruitment season. You typically have two people from the business. I go in with my junior, who happens to speak Russian. Right kid comes through, Russian-speaking kid. At the point that he recognizes that my junior is Russian too, he decides, I'm going to answer your questions in Russian to that guy. So I'm sitting in an interview where someone is responding to my questions in a language I clearly don't understand. Suffice to say, that was a very short interview, and my parting words were, you may have got the job if you had actually answered my questions and recognized that I'm the decision maker in this equation. Next time, don't do that.
Okay, cool. This is a quick one. I'm going to throw this at Tonde, actually. Oh, by the way, I suddenly remembered, if I hadn't become a lawyer, I'd have probably wanted to become a boxer, just so you know. Yeah, just putting it out there. So Anthony Joshua is filling a space I think I could have filled quite well. But there you go. Tonde, this one is for you. I'm very keen to get your take on, you know, the wave of third world leadership. You know, I feel like Africa, and obviously Zimbabwe, where we're from, there is a real wave of enterprising, intelligent young people who are coming to the fore, you know, people who have real prospects given the right opportunities. What would be your encouragement to them, because I really feel like they can be positioned to take over in the years to come, if they're given the opportunity.
You only need to go as close to home as Kenya, as close to home as South Africa, where they are small SMEs that are doing absolutely phenomenal work in the technology space, and they just need to just break into the international market. And I would like to encourage anyone with an idea, with a business mindset, and even with the skill to pursue it, because the opportunities are out there, and you've just got to be relentless with it. And look at markets that are emerging. So, for example, Saudi Arabia and Dubai, for example, they're trying to focus their income away from oil into finance. So they're focusing on technology, apps, development. So there's a lot of budget for certain industries. And if you do your research, and this again goes to my point, look at the Financial Times, read Bloomberg, look at what sovereign wealth funds are devoting their monies to, because that is where you can find a hole to jump into. In Dubai, for example, just to bring it down into a legal framework, they are looking significantly into online dispute resolution, and there are not enough platforms from there. So if I'm going to leave some sort of seed for anyone out there, is to look into that particular area of development and start working on it, if that's a business idea, because there's room for it. There's a myriad of opportunities, and I do want to encourage, and I think there's a lot of talent in Africa and from third world countries, and you just have to pioneer and be aggressive with your ideas. The world is waiting.
But I suppose the issue is typically around financing and stuff like that. So it's easier for the type of person to go and get support. We don't tend to have a big culture of investing in each other's businesses, because
yes.
burnt out, Navarwa, and whatever it is that kind of keeps us away from trusting our own people with our business. So there's a deeper structural sort of cultural issue that needs to be redressed in order for us. I'd love an economy that's self-sustaining. I'd love for a young person to come and say, you know what, guys, I heard you on the panel. Could you invest in my legal tech? And, us being able to rally around, crowdfund and support those efforts. But we've got some ways to go. And hopefully a platform like this is going to inspire these sorts of thinkings.
I mean, you only have to go to Instagram. Instagram has a lot of pages where you have sort of support Black businesses, support young minorities. Think outside the box, and you will find an avenue to break through.
Well, guys, I would like you to end today's session by individually going around and leaving that final, if there's one thing you must remember from what I said today, it is X. Please fill in that X. And that's I.
Hey, I think I'll start. Your why. Remember your why anytime anyone asks you. And just very, very quickly, you have to stretch and behave your way to success all the time. And I'm not talking about faking it until you make it. Work hard.
I'll go next. I'm thinking, find a way. I think we've spoken about standing out. Just find a way to capture your own attributes, your culture, or whatever it is, and make sure you sell it. I remember speaking to a Zimbabwean student who said, well, my CV, I don't really have anything exciting. I'm competing against people whose CV will say, well, I'm great. I ski on the Alps, every holiday. And I just don't have anything that makes me unique. And I think it's really just about celebrating who you are. A lot of people in the West don't know how to play marimba, an African xylophone. They don't know how to play mbira. They don't know how to speak an African tongue which has clicks. Sell that. Put it on your CV. Because right now, all we have is everyone's got these A's. I've seen so many CV. They've got 10 A's for GCSEs. They've got. So now, when we're looking at the CV, we're now just actually looking to see what makes this CV stand out, what makes this person a bit more interesting. In one of my firms where I worked before, I'd gone through all the interviews, and the last interview, the managing partner said, oh, you know, this interview is just to see whether you're the right fit, whether you're going to get on, whether you're going to have banter, office banter. So it's really important to be adaptable and show, you know, I can really get on with everyone. So just embrace who you are, whatever you've learned, whether you learned Kumusha, how to mill sugarcane, make it work on your CV, you know. Just embrace who you are, and you'd be surprised who's actually impressed by that, because people are brought into the interview room for the most ridiculous thing. Oh, he said he's a poet. Do you think we should bring him in? I think it would be great to bring him in. And that's it. He's in front of us. So you need to find a way to get in the door.
I would say have an eye for a need anywhere you are, because those are the people that get noticed. If you look at something that requires a need and you spot it out, you tend to get noticed more. And also when it comes to working, do everything with excellence. Develop a habit of working, even if it's just a short 3-word email, even down to making tea or doing some. Do absolutely everything at school, uni, your first job with excellence. It's a habit that will also get you noticed. And the last thing, work hard and until you get to where you need to get to. Sorry, one last thing I just need from my own story. Sorry. Just one last thing I just need to say, and I'm only saying this because I said I promised myself I'd say this on the call. When I qualified as a solicitor, I wanted to work in arbitration, to be an arbitration lawyer, and I wanted to work in a firm that focused on it. I was not getting the job offers, so I put on my mirror, I am going to be an arbitration lawyer. And I put it every morning when I woke up, I read it out loud, I spoke it, I declared it, I put it into the universe, and I prayed to God that, God, this is my vision, make it work for me, please. And you know what? 7 months later, God started opening up doors, and now I'm exactly what I wanted to be, because I had the vision for it and God made a way. But it starts with the vision. It starts with the vision.
Tunde, that, you know, like you took the words right out of my mouth. I'm a big believer in incubating what it is that you want to accomplish, you know, and you can't see it. I'm in my office at the moment, but we have a family vision board here, and it has all of the things that we want to accomplish over the next 10 years. There's nothing more powerful than being very clear about what you want to accomplish, putting it somewhere where you can see it all the time, speaking to it, incubating it in your mind, and eventually it becomes a reality. But just quickly as well, and this is my final, because I'm also a preacher, you know that, right? So every preacher has 3 finals. There's a quote by Eric Hoffer, and basically what he says, he talks about the fact that man is eminently a storyteller. For me, stories are everything, you know, and if you're gonna get in the door, it's gonna be a product of, like, you know, like Mucha was saying, you see all of these CVs with A's on them, and I think it was Tenji actually, you know, you see all of these CVs with A's on them. The distinguishing factor is always going to be your story, and everybody has a story. It doesn't matter whether you were born on the wrong side of the tracks, it doesn't matter whether you're the wrong color, it doesn't matter whether you're tall or short. Everybody has a story. So it's about packaging your story, and if you tell it well, somebody will bite. So there you go.
And if you're aspiring to be a lawyer, it's always the best story that wins. So storytelling becomes absolutely paramount. I would like to thank everybody who's tuned in today to Zoom in Zim. We've had a very engaging discussion with a brilliant panel of legal experts, from a judge / barrister come judge, legal director, a managing partner, and arbitration lawyer. I'm hoping that their LinkedIn is open to follow-ups. If you do have that one thing, sorry, I'm volunteering you guys. If there's anyone watching who really feels that something that's been said resonates with them and they'd like to find out more or get support, this is my circle of people, and I can volunteer and believe that they'll be supportive of you. Obviously, we don't want to drown them with trivia, so please do think out what you're asking, because they're all very busy people. But you are encouraged to reach out, you're encouraged to seek mentorship, you're encouraged to ask questions. Thanks again for joining Zoom in Zim, and we will see you again next week. Take care. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Mucha.
Bye. Thank you.